Hello and welcome to this week's sermon. This sermon is for the 15th of June 2025. It will be Trinity Sunday, Year C. I'm using the second set of readings, which are Psalm 73, verses 1 to 3 and 16 to 28, and the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verses 1 to 17. Life has its milestones. We all pass them in our own way and at our own speed. But broadly speaking, they are the same. They differ a little between boys and girls, but usually they correspond to the same milestone. I was talking recently to my eldest son, who remembers vividly an event that I have completely forgotten. We were on holiday somewhere, I think it was Scotland, and he was about 15 years of age, and we went to play squash. He remembers it so clearly because for the first time in his life, he was able to beat Dad at something physical. He won the first game. He then remembers that I wasted no time in demanding a rematch. He remembers how utterly ruthless and clinical I was in that second game. I enforced the rules. No generous allowances being made. I went for my shots. I beat him, and the world was put back on its axis. Only the world had been fundamentally changed for him. It showed him the first sight of the future. Manhood beckoned. Beating Dad for the first time was a special, memorable moment for him, even if not for me. But I told my son yesterday that my equivalent memory was a time as a teenager I beat my dad at arm wrestling. My mother was distinctly shocked. Surprisingly, Dad didn't seem to mind. I have never forgotten it. I also recall from about that time the occasion when our youth leader at church asked how we saw our future. I said I wasn't sure. It was before I had my dramatic call to ministry when I was attacked on the way to school, a story I told you back in February. So at this point, must have been before that obviously, I said, I have this sense that I will either be very good or very bad, and I don't know which it will be. Well, I failed on both counts. I turned out to be neither very bad nor very good, but at least I opted to be as good as I could manage. One of life's milestones is that first realization that you don't have to do what your parents think is right, or even what your teachers, or even the law think is right. You have the ability to choose for yourself. I also remember being put to the test. Lots of my mates were going shoplifting during the school lunch break. They hopped over the back fence and came back laden with chocolate and bubble gum. There was I with next to nothing because I paid for it, whilst the others had as much as they wanted and more besides, just by thieving it. And I began to feel a bit of a fool. What's the point of being honest when they just get away with it? This is exactly what the psalmist is going through in Psalm 73. It is the inverse of the book of Job. Job wonders why good people suffer. This psalm asks why wicked people prosper. The psalmist admits to wondering that what the point is of being faithful and trying to be good when the wicked so plainly sail through life without a care in the world. In retrospect, he acknowledges this was foolish thinking, but he does confess to having gone through such doubt. The thing that had saved him and brought him back on track was when he had gone into the temple to pray. There, in quiet contemplation, in the nearer, uncluttered presence of God, the psalmist refound his faith and commitment. The wicked have no long-term future, concludes the psalmist. What does it matter if they rob and cheat, if they pay the price later with their soul? God is faith's reward. How could anyone want more, either on earth or in heaven? The psalmist isn't the only person to go off track and wonder whether there's any point to faith when so many in the world seem to just manage so well without it. It is only when you step back for a moment in quiet contemplation that you regain your eternal perspective. I mean, no one would be foolish enough to say Japan had beaten the All Blacks because they were ahead in the first 10 minutes of the game. What happens over 80 minutes is what really counts. So this psalm has been used down the centuries by faithful people when going through periods of doubt or despair as a spur to seek quiet, contemplative prayer. Simply spending time with God in God's house helps reorientate life from doubt and despair back towards faith and hope. In our reading from John's Gospel today, we might well ask, who's the fool here? Nicodemus purports to be spiritually wise, and he thinks Jesus is a fool when he talks some nonsense about being born a second time. How can a man enter his mother's womb a second time and be born? He scoffs. Jesus is not impressed. He had expected better from one of Israel's spiritual leaders. Nicodemus famously comes right in the end. He thinks seriously about what Jesus has said. He didn't just shrug it off as the delusions of a young pretender. So we meet Nicodemus again when he speaks up for Jesus in the Sanhedrin, calling for a fair trial. And he crops up again when he brings spices for Jesus' burial. But not all the world's experts are as open-minded as Nicodemus. The world is full of experts of all kinds. One British newspaper has the habit of writing such headlines as, "I'm a packing expert. You've been packing your suitcase all wrong." Or, "I'm a shopping expert. You've been storing your onions all wrong." Well, the world is full of experts, and many still think Jesus was talking foolish nonsense to Nicodemus, and continue to hold us for fools who believe such stuff. They say that we are weak because we need religion as a prop. Well, there will be times where we might wonder whether all those experts that surround us and fill the airwaves and cyberspace might be right after all. And perhaps we have been taken for a ride by the likes of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John and Paul and the rest of the troop. Well, firstly, I would always counsel you to be a bit more sceptical about those claiming to be experts. In the news at the moment, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, claims to have been an economist at the Bank of England. But allegedly, according to some of the papers, she served briefly in the complaints department. Don't know the truth of that, but it does make you wonder. Those voicing strong opinions about religion do not necessarily know the first thing about it. Volume is no substitute for thinking. Nicodemus was a true expert, and as any true expert would, knew when he had met with an idea that deserved further investigation. So as I say, firstly, take those who claim to be experts with a pinch of salt. Don't just fall for any claim that they make. Secondly, in moments of doubt, when you're wondering whether it might be a lot easier just to follow the crowd and stop worrying about God, faith, the church and salvation and all those other ethereal notions that most of your neighbours never give a second thought to, when such moments assail you, do what the psalmist did. Seek a quiet spot, find a holy place where the veil is thin, and spend time in God's company without other distractions. There you will regain your sense of perspective. You will no doubt conclude, as the psalmist concluded long ago, that what does it matter if the godless prosper and mock, if they pay with their very souls? Amen.